Alain Delon, one of the most iconic figures in the world of cinema, is a name that has become synonymous with French elegance, charisma, and an enigmatic presence that has captivated audiences for decades. Yet, behind the polished facade of this cinematic titan lies a narrative filled with deep emotional turmoil, a narrative that has remained largely hidden from the public eye. Among the few who have glimpsed the true depths of his sorrow is Brigitte Bardot, a woman who herself has been a symbol of beauty, rebellion, and passion in French culture. As Delon's close friend, Bardot has observed with a heavy heart the profound unhappiness that has shadowed Delon throughout his life, a sentiment she has expressed with candid honesty in recent times. Brigitte Bardot, who rose to fame in the 1950s and was once dubbed the most beautiful woman in the world, shared the screen with Alain Delon in the 1961 film Les Amours Célèbres. Their on-screen chemistry quickly translated into a deep and enduring friendship, one that would see them through the highs and lows of their respective careers. Despite the glittering success and public adulation that both received, Bardot and Delon were no strangers to the darker side of fame, each grappling with their own personal demons. Bardot's reflections on Delon's life are particularly poignant, given her own experiences with the pressures of stardom. Known for her passionate advocacy for animal rights and her outspoken nature, Bardot has never shied away from speaking her mind. However, when it comes to Delon, her words carry a weight of sadness and empathy. She has described Delon as a man who, despite his extraordinary life and achievements, has never truly been happy. I think he was never happy. Unlike Jean-Paul Belmondo, who enjoyed life, Alain Delon was tortured, Bardot confided in an interview, her voice tinged with melancholy. This revelation is all the more striking considering Delon's public image as a man of confidence and allure. To the world, he was the epitome of masculine grace, an actor whose performances were imbued with an intensity that left audiences mesmerized. Yet, according to Bardot, this same intensity was reflective of the inner turmoil that plagued Delon. She observed that, while his friend and contemporary Jean-Paul Belmondo embraced life with a carefree spirit, Delon seemed to be perpetually haunted by a sense of unease, a restlessness that prevented him from finding true peace. The roots of Delon's unhappiness are complex and multifaceted, stemming from both his personal life and his professional experiences. Born in 1935, Delon's early years were marked by hardship. His parents divorced when he was young, and he spent much of his childhood in foster care, a time that would leave lasting scars on his psyche. This early instability perhaps laid the groundwork for the deep-seated insecurities that would later surface in his adult life. As Delon's star rose in the 1960s, he became a fixture in the world of international cinema, known for his roles in films such as Le Samouraï, Plein Soleil, and The Leopard. His striking good looks and brooding demeanor made him a natural fit for roles that required a certain aloofness, a detachment that mirrored his own emotional distance from the world. Yet, as his fame grew, so too did the pressures that came with it. Delon found himself increasingly isolated, surrounded by admirers and sycophants, but unable to form the deep, meaningful connections that he so desperately craved. Bardot's insights into Delon's character are particularly illuminating in this regard. She noted that, despite his success, Delon always seemed to be searching for something more, something that eluded him no matter how hard he tried to grasp it. He has everything, and yet, there is an emptiness that he cannot fill, Bardot remarked, her words reflecting the sadness of watching a friend struggle with an existential void that no amount of fame or fortune could alleviate. In recent years, Delon's health has declined, and he has withdrawn from public life, further deepening Bardot's concern for him. She has spoken about how she has not heard from Delon in over a year, a silence that she finds deeply troubling. Nothing. I send him a letter for every birthday, but no more responses. He is not only very unwell, but there is also the scandal with the children. Bardot lamented, her voice betraying a mix of frustration and sorrow. The scandal she refers to is likely the strained relationship Delon has had with his children, a source of great pain for him in his later years. The contrast between Bardot's own life and that of Delon is stark. While Bardot has found a sense of purpose in her advocacy for animal rights, dedicating herself to causes that she believes in with unwavering commitment, Delon has struggled to find a similar outlet for his emotions. Bardot has described herself as happy in my solitude, finding peace in the quiet life she leads away from the spotlight. Delon, on the other hand, seems to have been unable to escape the shadows of his past, shadows that have only grown darker with time. Bardot's reflections on Delon's life serve as a poignant reminder of the often unseen struggles that lie behind the glamorous veneer of celebrity. They reveal a man who, despite his outward success, has been beset by an inner turmoil that has robbed him of the happiness that so many assume accompanies fame and fortune. Delon's story is a testament to the fact that even the most celebrated lives can be marked by profound sorrow, a sorrow that is all the more tragic because it is so often hidden from view. As Bardot continues to advocate for the causes she holds dear, she does so with the knowledge that her friend, Alain Delon, remains in a state of anguish that she is powerless to alleviate. It is a burden that she carries with her, a constant reminder of the fragility of happiness and the elusive nature of peace in a world that so often equates success with contentment. In her own words, Bardot has expressed a wish for Delon to find some measure of solace, a wish that remains unfulfilled as she watches from afar, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her friend may never know true happiness. Alain Delon's early life was marred by hardship. Born in 1935, his childhood was far from stable. His parents divorced when he was young, leading him to spend his formative years in various foster homes. This period of instability left a lasting impact on Delon, sowing the seeds of the insecurities that would plague him throughout his life. The absence of a solid family foundation haunted him, manifesting as a constant search for belonging and a sense of completeness that he would never fully attain. As Delon entered adulthood, his striking looks and undeniable talent led him into the world of acting. He quickly rose to prominence in the 1960s, becoming a symbol of French cinema. His roles in films like Le Samouraï and Plein Soleil solidified his status as an international star. However, the fame that accompanied these successes did little to quell the unrest within him. Instead, it seemed to amplify his feelings of isolation and detachment. Despite his public image as a confident and enigmatic figure, those close to Delon knew of his inner struggles. Brigitte Bardot, who had become one of his closest friends, saw the toll that fame took on him. She witnessed the ways in which Delon's pursuit of perfection in his craft and his life left him increasingly isolated. While others in his circle, like Jean-Paul Belmondo, embraced life with joy and ease, Delon seemed perpetually burdened by his own expectations and the weight of his past. Bardot's observations highlight a fundamental difference in how Delon and Belmondo approached life. Belmondo was known for his light-heartedness and love of adventure, traits that endeared him to audiences and brought him personal happiness. In contrast, Delon was more introspective, often brooding and withdrawn. His roles in films often mirrored this demeanor, portraying characters who were cool, detached, and solitary. This alignment between his on-screen persona and his real-life struggles made it difficult for Delon to separate his identity from the characters he played, further deepening his sense of disconnection. As Delon aged, the pressures of his early life and the demands of his career began to take a more visible toll. Health issues emerged, and he started to withdraw from public life. Bardot, who had always been concerned about her friend's well-being, noted with increasing alarm the changes in Delon's behavior. She lamented the fact that, despite her efforts to stay in touch, she had not heard from him in over a year. The silence was deafening, a stark contrast to the vibrant friendship they once shared. The strain on Delon's relationship with his children added another layer to his suffering. Bardot, aware of the scandal surrounding Delon's family dynamics, empathized with the pain it caused him. For a man who had spent his life seeking connection, the estrangement from his children was particularly devastating. It underscored the recurring theme in Delon's life, a yearning for close relationships that seemed perpetually out of reach. In the twilight of his life, Alain Delon remains a figure shrouded in mystery and sorrow. His legacy in cinema is undeniable, yet the personal cost of that legacy is equally significant. For all his achievements, Delon's life has been marked by an absence of the very thing he seemed to seek most: happiness. Brigitte Bardot, in her candid reflections, captures this tragic irony. As she continues to live out her days with a sense of purpose in her advocacy for animal rights, she does so with the knowledge that her dear friend may never find the peace she has managed to secure for herself. Alain Delon's career continued to flourish throughout the 1960s and 1970s, with iconic performances that solidified his status as a cinematic legend. However, as his fame grew, so did the burdens that came with it. The more he was celebrated, the more isolated he became. Delon's private life was marked by a series of tumultuous relationships, each of which seemed to leave him more scarred and distant than the last. His romance with Romy Schneider was particularly significant, leaving an indelible mark on him even after their relationship ended. The death of Schneider in 1982 was a blow that Delon never fully recovered from, intensifying the loneliness that had already taken root in his life. As Delon aged, he found himself increasingly alienated from the world around him. The film industry that had once embraced him began to change, leaving him feeling like an outsider. He withdrew from acting, making fewer and fewer public appearances. His health also began to deteriorate, adding physical pain to his already substantial emotional burden. Despite these challenges, Delon maintained a stoic exterior, rarely allowing the public to see the depth of his despair. Brigitte Bardot, one of the few people who truly understood Delon, watched these developments with growing concern. She saw the toll that age and illness were taking on him, and she feared for his well-being. Bardot, who had found a new purpose in her advocacy work, wished that Delon could find something similar to give his life meaning. But she knew that his struggles ran deep, rooted in a lifetime of unresolved pain and regret. In her reflections, Bardot often compared Delon to Jean-Paul Belmondo, another giant of French cinema. Belmondo, in contrast to Delon, seemed to have found a way to enjoy life, embracing the joys that came with fame without letting it consume him. Bardot noted that while Belmondo thrived in the spotlight, Delon was tortured by it. This difference, she believed, was at the heart of Delon's unhappiness. Bardot's insights reveal a man who, despite his success, was never at peace with himself. Delon's life, marked by a constant search for fulfillment, was a tragic illustration of the emptiness that can accompany even the most glittering of careers. His inability to find happiness, despite having achieved so much, is a stark reminder of the limitations of fame and fortune. As Delon's health continued to decline, Bardot's concern grew. She noted with sadness that she had not heard from him in over a year, a silence that weighed heavily on her. The distance between them was a source of pain for Bardot, who had always valued their friendship. She continued to reach out, sending letters on his birthday, but received no response. This lack of communication only deepened her fears about his well-being. In her moments of reflection, Bardot often thought about the happier times they had shared, before the weight of the world had crushed Delon's spirit. She remembered their work together on Les Amours Célèbres and the bond that had developed between them during those years. But those memories were tinged with sorrow, as Bardot knew that the man she once knew had been changed irrevocably by the hardships he had endured. Bardot's reflections on Delon's life are not just a commentary on his personal struggles, but also a broader meditation on the nature of fame and its impact on those who attain it. She sees in Delon's story a cautionary tale about the dangers of living in the public eye, where the pressures and expectations can become overwhelming. For Bardot, who herself stepped away from the spotlight to focus on her passion for animal rights, Delon's continued suffering is a poignant reminder of the choices she made to protect her own well-being. In the end, Bardot's thoughts return to a single, painful truth. Alain Delon was never truly happy. Despite the love of millions, the adoration of fans, and the acclaim of his peers, Delon's life was marked by a profound sense of loss and longing. Bardot, who knew him better than most, saw this unhappiness not as a temporary state, but as a fundamental aspect of his character, something that had been with him for as long as she could remember. As Delon retreats further into solitude, Bardot can only watch from a distance, her heart heavy with the knowledge that there is little she can do to help him. She continues to send her letters, hoping for a reply that may never come, and reflects on the tragic trajectory of a man who, despite all his achievements, could never find peace. This ongoing sadness over her friend's situation remains a constant in Bardot's life, a reminder of the fragility of happiness and the profound impact that a troubled past can have on even the most successful individuals. For Brigitte Bardot, Alain Delon's story is a source of deep sorrow, but also a testament to the enduring power of friendship, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. As Alain Delon's health continued to decline, his isolation deepened. The man who once captivated audiences with his magnetic presence now found himself increasingly alone, both physically and emotionally. His estrangement from his children, combined with the loss of many close friends, left him with few people to turn to. Even those who remained close to him, like Brigitte Bardot, found it difficult to reach him. The silence that had grown between them was more than just a lack of communication. It was a reflection of the deepening despair that consumed Delon. Bardot, despite her own advancing age and health issues, remained deeply concerned about Delon. She often spoke of her fear that he would die alone, without having found the peace that had eluded him for so long. In her heart, she wished that he could somehow come to terms with his past and find some measure of contentment in his remaining years. But as time went on, it became increasingly clear to Bardot that this was unlikely. Delon's life had been defined by turmoil, and there seemed to be no escape from it, even as he approached the end of his journey. In interviews, Bardot has spoken candidly about her friend's suffering. She has described him as a man who was never able to let go of the pain and disappointment that had accumulated over the years. To her, Delon's life was a tragedy, not because of what he had achieved, but because of what he had lost along the way. Despite his fame, his wealth, and his status as a cultural icon, Delon remained a man haunted by his past, unable to find the happiness that others saw as his birthright. Bardot's reflections on Delon's life often turn to the contrast between his public persona and his private reality. While the world saw him as a figure of strength and confidence, those who knew him best were aware of the vulnerability that lay beneath the surface. Delon's brooding, intense performances on screen were not just acts of artistic expression. They were also expressions of his inner turmoil. The characters he played, often solitary and conflicted, were reflections of his own struggles. In this way, Delon's art became a means of coping with his pain, even as it reinforced the very emotions he sought to escape. As Delon's health deteriorated, Bardot's anxiety for him grew. She worried that he would continue to retreat further into himself, cutting off the few remaining connections he had. The prospect of Delon living out his final days in isolation was something that weighed heavily on her. Bardot, who had found solace in her work with animals and in the quiet life she led away from the spotlight, could not bear the thought of her friend suffering in silence. She continued to reach out, hoping against hope that he would respond, but each passing day without a reply only deepened her sense of loss. The bond between Delon and Bardot, forged in the early days of their careers and strengthened by decades of friendship, remained one of the few constants in Delon's life. Yet even this bond seemed to be slipping away, as Delon's withdrawal from the world became more pronounced. Bardot, ever the loyal friend, refused to give up on him, but she knew that there was little she could do to ease his suffering. The distance between them, both physical and emotional, was something that neither of them could bridge. In her private moments, Bardot often reflected on the nature of their friendship. She thought about the joy and laughter they had shared in their younger years, and how those memories had become increasingly rare as time went on. The man she once knew, full of life and energy, had been replaced by someone she barely recognized. Delon's transformation, from a vibrant star to a shadow of his former self, was something that Bardot found difficult to reconcile. It was as if the weight of his past had finally become too much for him to bear, crushing the spirit that had once defined him. As the months passed with no word from Delon, Bardot began to accept the painful reality that her friend might never find the peace she so desperately wished for him. She continued to send her letters, small tokens of the love and friendship that had endured for so many years, but with each unanswered note, her hope faded a little more. The silence that had settled between them was not just a lack of communication. It was a symbol of the deep, unresolvable sadness that had taken hold of Delon's life. In the end, Bardot's reflections on Alain Delon's life are a study in contrasts. They reveal a man who, despite his outward success, was plagued by inner demons that he could never fully escape. Delon's story is a testament to the complexities of the human condition, where external achievements can mask profound internal struggles. For Bardot, the tragedy of Delon's life lies not in what he accomplished, but in the happiness he could never attain. As she continues to advocate for the causes she believes in, Bardot carries with her the weight of her friend's suffering. It is a burden she bears with grace, even as she knows that there is little she can do to ease his pain. The friendship between Alain Delon and Brigitte Bardot is a poignant reminder of the enduring power of connection, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. But it is also a reminder that some wounds, no matter how deep, may never fully heal. As Alain Delon's health continued to decline, the silence between him and Brigitte Bardot grew more profound. Each passing month without a response from Delon left Bardot more anxious and saddened. She could only imagine the extent of his suffering, his once vibrant spirit now dimmed by years of internal conflict and the harsh realities of aging. Bardot often thought about the happier times they had shared, the laughter and camaraderie that had once defined their relationship. Those memories now felt like distant echoes of a life that no longer existed. The man who had once been so full of life, so confident and magnetic, seemed to have retreated into a shell of his former self, isolated and unreachable. The physical decline that had overtaken Delon was evident in the few public appearances he made. His once strong and commanding presence was now marked by frailty and vulnerability. Bardot, who had known Delon in his prime, found it painful to see the toll that time had taken on him. She knew that the physical pain he endured was only a small part of the suffering that plagued him. The emotional and psychological wounds that had festered for decades were far more damaging. Despite her own struggles with aging and health issues, Bardot remained resolute in her support for Delon. She continued to send him letters, small gestures of love and friendship that she hoped would bring him some comfort. But with each unanswered letter, her hope waned. The distance between them seemed insurmountable, a reflection of the emotional chasm that had grown over the years. Bardot's reflections on Delon's life were often tinged with regret. She wished that she could have done more to help him, to ease the burden of the pain he carried. But she also understood that some battles are fought alone, and that Delon's struggle was one that he had to face on his own terms. The isolation that defined his later years was a product of his lifelong battle with his inner demons, a battle that had left him scarred and weary. As Delon's health continued to deteriorate, Bardot feared that the end was near. She worried that he would pass away without ever having found the peace that had eluded him for so long. The thought of losing her friend in such a state of despair was almost too much to bear. Bardot knew that she had to accept the reality of the situation, but it didn't make it any easier. In her quieter moments, Bardot often reflected on the fragility of life and the elusive nature of happiness. Delon's life, despite all its outward success, was a stark reminder of how difficult it can be to find true contentment. The pressures of fame, the weight of past traumas, and the loneliness that comes with aging had all conspired to rob Delon of the joy that he so desperately sought. Bardot's reflections on Delon were not just a lament for her friend, but also a meditation on the broader human experience. She understood that Delon's struggles were not unique. They were part of the human condition, a reflection of the deep-seated fears and insecurities that we all carry. But in Delon's case, those struggles were magnified by the public nature of his life, making his pain all the more visible, yet all the more hidden. As the years passed, Bardot continued to live her life with a sense of purpose, finding solace in her advocacy for animals and the quiet life she had built for herself. But the shadow of Delon's suffering was never far from her thoughts. She carried with her the weight of their shared history, the memories of a friendship that had endured so much, yet had been unable to overcome the profound sadness that defined Delon's life. In the end, Bardot knew that there was little she could do to change the course of Delon's life. She could offer her love and support, but the rest was up to him. And as much as she wished for a different outcome, she had to accept that Delon's story was one of tragedy, a life marked by unfulfilled dreams and unrelenting sorrow. Bardot's reflections on Alain Delon are a poignant reminder of the complexities of the human condition. They reveal a man who, despite all his achievements, was never able to escape the pain that defined his life. And they serve as a testament to the enduring power of friendship, even in the face of overwhelming adversity. For Bardot, the story of Alain Delon is not just the story of a man, but the story of a lifetime of struggle, a story that continues to resonate long after the final curtain has fallen.